Welcome to episode 53 of the Loane Hockey Podcast, where today we're going to be talking about second overall pick in the 2024 NHL draft, that is Artyom Levshunov. So Artyom Levshunov, what I've been really impressed with, and I've scouted him for a little bit of time now, coming out of the Belarus system, is the fast track of his development and how he's continued to trend, how his game has continued to trend, and how well he's continued to play coming out of junior and being a one and done in the NCAA. And now he has a chance to either make the NHL or he's going to play in Rockford in the American Hockey League. So he has two really good options because either or, if he plays in the NHL, that's going to be great for him. If he plays in Rockford, that's also going to be great for him because it's going to be a great developmental opportunity either way. Rockford, he might get a lot more ice time. He might get consistent top four ice time with the minor league team. And you might be able to see some really good D pairings down there with the Blackhawks prospects that they have. Ethan Del Mastro could be coming back in Rockford, and he could be paired with Levshunov as a lefty and righty. Levshunov being the righty, Del Mastro being the lefty, and Del Mastro was an all-star last year. But anyway, so with Levshunov, what I really like about his game is the well-roundedness and the completeness. And I remember scouting him, and he was playing for the Belarus. He was playing in Belarus at the time, and this was during the Ukraine situation. So there was a sense in me where I was like, okay, if he were to leave, where would he go? He wouldn't necessarily go to the KHL because that's not an option. The CHL import option was not there because Belarusian players and Russian players were not allowed to be a part of that draft and they're excluded. So the CHL wasn't even an option. And he couldn't stay in Belarus. So he had to go somewhere. So as it turns out, he went to Green Bay in the USHL. And I wasn't surprised by this because it really was his only option if he wanted to play major junior and he wanted to play a high level of junior where he would get reputable amount of ice time. He would be a consistent player and he would get the minutes that he deserved because he played so well coming out of the Belarus system and he dominated that level. He didn't need to go back for another year. If he went back for another year, it probably would have hurt his development. So he played that first year in Green Bay, that his first and only season of junior in Green Bay. And what I really liked about his activation habits were his transition play, his ozone funneling, and how well he was activating down the line, moving laterally, and how well he was using his feet, his poise, his awareness in the offensive zone, moving downhill. He could do a variety of different things with the puck, and he showed it early on in the preseason and throughout the rest of the season where you didn't necessarily see him dominate per se, but he was very consistent in how he was attacking. So sometimes there are situations where he's able to take over a play or take over a shift. Other times he would be and doing details that were a little bit more subtle. You wouldn't necessarily notice the eye right away, but would take a little bit more finding in terms of looking at his shifts and video more in depth to really understand what he was doing in those situations. And defensively, he's really elite as a shutdown player too. And that's the other thing. I wish analytics were able to track some of the junior players because you get a better feel for players through the junior process. But obviously, that's a little bit more impossible with how many junior players are. But with Levshunov, he defended so well with his stick, so well with his feet, so well defending entries, and he was stifling guys. He was so good at being able to stifle players on entries against, and he would be able to keep guys at the perimeter really well. And obviously, he's a physical player. He can rely both on positioning habits and also at the same time he can use physicality to be able to shut plays down. So he has versatility and a dual threat defensive ability in that realm. And so when you're talking about Levshunov in that sense, he can surf, and we talked about surfing yesterday for defensemen. He can surf, he can angle, he can close plays down the stick and use positioning and body positioning elements. At the same time, if he's gonna step up to the play, he's gonna step up. And he's not afraid to do that. He's not afraid to step up when he needs to. And sometimes the situation calls for that, and he can shut a play down immediately. He's a very strong body, so anytime he's going in for a physical check, he's gonna knock somebody off the puck. He's gonna knock somebody down. So you're getting a lot of different aspects in terms of defensive play out of him, and he's gonna be a very complete defenseman in the NHL. It's more a matter of how much offensive ability does he actually, because he didn't necessarily dominate junior. He dominated at the NCAA level. He was almost point per game. And obviously, he had such a good season, he didn't need to go back another year. So now the real test is, can he provide some offense coming into his first pro season, either in Rockford or Chicago? Can he provide that offense? And that's a real big question. And that's the real big question for him heading into the future. But you see a lot of activation habits, and that's what I'm really intrigued by with him and how the Blackhawks run their ozone systems and systematically and tactically speaking, how that will be inclined to Levshunov's game. Levshunov's going to get a shot. It could be in the next year or 2 years down the line, whatever he makes in the NHL consistently, where he'd be given power play opportunity. He'd be given opportunity to play top 4 minutes. He'd be given opportunity to thrive and develop within that system. So, offensively speaking, he'd have more opportunities to be able to join the play, lead the rush, be a threat on offense, and be able to attack on offense. And that's the baseline that you're getting with him because he has a knack for having offensive instincts. He has a knack for joining the play. He has a knack for joining the rush. He has a knack for understanding how to be involved in the play. And it doesn't necessarily be it doesn't necessarily mean being the flashiest player per se, but it means for him being consistent within his details and his puck handling and how he's able to control space to be able to link together puck possession scenarios, either on passing or puck control individually. You've seen, and I've seen multiple times with him in Green Bay and Michigan State, where he's gone end to end. He can cruise through layers of neutral zone forechecking up the middle of the ice too. He can cruise through that and he can find a way to escape that pressure using his skating and using his puck skills to be able to get around that pressure and find the inside, attack that space, and be able to take advantage of it. And it's so rare for a player to have the ability to transition the puck very fluidly and with so much poise. And Levshunov has the ability. He has the ability to want to attack, to want to activate, and want to be involved. So Levshunov, another intriguing point when talking about him is he doesn't necessarily play like a defenseman sometimes. When I watch him in the offensive zone, he's very active, and he's very active in terms of how he's positioning himself. It could be around the net, it could be high near the point, it could be switching off in a little sequence, in a give and go sequence with a teammate for a passing option. Something along the lines of that, where he's always active in the ozone, and that's part of what makes me believe that in terms of his pro game, he's gonna have to make more decisive decisions, and he's gonna have to play faster, yes, but you see the knack for his ability to do that already, and not just be stagnant at the point. He has a knack for wanting to move and wanting to activate and wanting to be a threat off the point and a threat in many areas of the ozone. So that's really intriguing when talking about him. He's not necessarily one dimensional where he's stapled to the point. He wants to be involved as much as possible. He's a puck possession player, obviously, as a defenseman. He loves to possess the puck. He loves to transition it. He loves to carry it on entries individually. He's not afraid to be a one-man rush. He can do a lot of different things that defensemen undersized don't necessarily have that ability to do. And he even plays like he's taller than he is. He does when you watch him play, he's filled out and he plays like he's at least 6'4", 6'5". He doesn't necessarily look like he's 6'2" when you first see him because the physical specimen and the raw physical ability that he has really separates himself from others. So him having that physical ability and innate competitiveness allows him to control play, and it's a presence for him when he's out there in the ice trying to control not only defensively and control defensive options, but being able to control play offensively as well. He plays so much bigger than he is. He's so fluid. He's so mobile, and I really like his pivots too, and how he pivots in a very smooth manner. So you often hear about smooth pivots, and it's such a vague terminology in hockey and the scouting world. But with his smooth pivots, what he's able to do, he's able to use his crossovers and he's able to use separation with his pivots. So sometimes players use pivots, but they pivot into pressure or they pivot into a space where it's not going to give them leverage. So with Levshunov, what he does, he's able to pivot and he's able to pivot with depth. So he's able to pivot away from the play, he can pivot into space. He pivots in ways that gives him options. So that's what I talk about in smooth pivots. And a player who has smooth pivots like that, they're able to really adjust their coordination because it's so much easier to adapt their feet when they have smoother pivots like that versus a choppy skater when they're trying to pivot. They end up losing speed or they lose speed on the turn or they end up losing the puck or something along those lines, where a choppy skater doesn't necessarily have that same ability. So a smooth pivoter is able to link together those elements and link together them fluidly. So Levshunov is a very smooth in terms of his pivots naturally. So that's really intriguing. And I really like watching him when talking about that. And he controls the play with his head up. He's always aware, and he is going to be an interesting case study, like I've mentioned, heading into the future. What is he going to be? What is his actual ceiling? That's the real question. What could he be offensively? Could he be a 40, 50 point guy who plays top four, top 2 minutes? Could he be a 60 or 70 point, or maybe even 80 plus? The offensive ceiling is still the biggest question to me with him, but I still notice a lot of different components that will really allow him to take control of his offensive game if he stays consistent with his habits, his decision making, how he's able to control play in space, and how he can continue to control plays in his own leverage. And that is going to give him a big distinction in terms of how he's able to play moving up each level that he plays at and in the future as well.